Patrick Coddou is my business partner at AJF Growth. At least that's what I've been telling people for a while, and it's not true. At least it's not officially true yet. It won't be true until the first of the year at 12:01 a.m., assuming everything goes according to plan, when Patrick and I officially finalize the paperwork for him to become the business partner, my COO. He already is the COO, but my actual true business partner at AJF Growth as we build an agency together. And so today on the show, Patrick is back for his monthly visit to the podcast to talk about exactly how we built the structure of this partnership. We think that this is one of those things that will be helpful to a lot of people building businesses because there's all kinds of considerations when somebody's getting equity in your business. How much should you give them? How much should they have versus how much you have? And how does that affect the control of the business going forward? Who makes decisions? And how much should it cost? And all of that stuff. We're going to get into all of it with as much specificity as we possibly can in this episode. Let's get into it right now with Patrick Coddou, my soon-to-be business partner. Hi, Patrick.
Howdy.
We got to get you with a cowboy hat on these. I think that's probably.
Oh yeah. I'll just bring it next time.
I'll go. I guess being in Torrance, I'll just go surf clothes. Is that? And the Beach Boys are from here, so I guess that would be like the stereotypical thing.
Yeah, because you're a big surfer and everything.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. My Dodger hat's as far as it's gonna get.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've surfed 4 times in my life, so yeah. I'd like to get into surfing though. We'll do that for another episode. Okay, so you are you're already the COO. But you're joining the business for real. Welcome. For real. Yeah, currently I'm actually a contractor. I'm not even an employee. Let's tell the people really what's going on. Yeah, it's true. Okay, when did we start talking about this? A year ago?
Oh gosh. I mean, we've been talking since I sold Supply, how are we going to work together? And by talking, just kind of shooting text messages at each other.
Yeah.
But probably early this year, we started getting serious about getting interested in the idea of what if I joined AJF? Because previously we had talked about we should start a brand together. And we had never really until this year talked about Patrick join AJF, probably because I had no interest in anything agency related. And you probably at the time didn't have interest in bringing on a partner or growing AJF. You started to get interested in growing AJF when? Early this year, maybe?
Yeah, so, something like that. I think part of the calculation for me, this actually is a good lead up to the conversation here. Part of that calculation for me, it was that I couldn't grow AJF seriously, and it's reflected in the name. The idea was that it was an extension of my freelancing where I was really hands-on with the work and those kinds of things. But I just didn't see a pathway. I'm too aware of my operational weaknesses to think that I could go do this. I don't even remember how. We just started to think well, what if you just came into this as part of it and joined up? And so let's talk about the discovery process. So here's where where we're trying to get to here is sort of the actual equity split and some of that, which we can talk about in a minute. But in coming into AJF Growth, what did you think about your role was going to need to be for it to make sense for you? And what were your concerns about that?
So in the spring, we started talking about, let's just kind of figure out, let's just start working together and see what happens. And I remember our very first not our very first, but our initial strong conversations were around, what are you even good at, Patrick? Because I was wondering myself, what am I good at in this next phase of my life? What am I passionate about? What do I want to do? What are you going to bring to the table? And I remember the way we originally started talking about it was being in the creative side of the business, more as I don't know, not a CMO, but a creative, guy. And because that's what I did a lot of at Supply. I basically wrote and filmed most of our ads, that I was really in the weeds. So we thought that maybe we would bring me in there. But the more we thought about it, and then we started to experiment in April. April was when I started to build kind of the first very initial iterations of Prometheus, which is our AI co-writing tool that we did a podcast on about a month ago. Go listen to it. It's great. When I started to work on that, I started to realize, this is really fun for me. And I'm far more interested in the operations of the business and the tooling of the business than I am getting in the weeds on creative. But it ended up being actually a perfect fit because I bring the knowledge of direct response advertising and making creative, which is
absolutely
what the large amount of our operations is. When I say that, I mean our team is significantly more creative operations than it is growth marketing, right? We have one growth strategist that just does amazing work, and I don't really have to have much oversight over him from an operations perspective, but all of the work I do touches the creative side of the business.
And much more of my oversight is actually with that
Yeah.
work where it's like, okay,
Yeah.
e-com strategy. So if I sort of play the other side of that, my actual skill set is like, I think I have some very strong opinions about what makes direct response ads
Mhm.
work at the level of strategy and like words and writing.
Yep.
And then like sort of media buying is another area where that's the case. And then to some
Yeah.
degree, I have strong opinions on forecasting, but although that is a little bit more of just sort of like a downstream of, anyway, I do have strong opinions about that, but that's the kind of areas of it. So it's like e-com growth strategy with some financial thoughtfulness mixed with the media buying, mixed with like ideas about creative. And it's all very living in the idea and concept world. And so suddenly there's this picture where it's like, wait a minute, we're two sides of the same coin. And this gets to something that I think is important in this conversation for me, which is like this notion of sort of real overlap in a lot of things in terms of values and vision for what we want for the company, which I think we could talk about more, but also like real differences in what we're good at. And I remember Taylor Holiday made some joke to me at one point, and he's going to come up a few times in this conversation, I'm sure. Taylor has been a super big help to both of us in sort of sorting out how to think about an equity split in the business. But, he said like you and Patrick are cosplaying like as if you guys have these different skill sets or whatever, and he was just totally wrong about that. Like we actually do have extremely different skill sets, I think, with just general competence overlap about how these things end up getting directed and all that. But like in terms of where we want to go spend our time, we end up doing really, really different things. So anyway, so that was the kind of conversation point. And on my side, I would say I was concerned in the initial stage that like you were going to come into this and it was going to be like, so like one of them is like, we're friends. And so I didn't want to like break that. I think that's always a concern with with equity partnerships. So we had to factor in like, is this like a threat to that in some way?
Yep, easily my biggest concern.
Yep. And then you have already built and exited an e-commerce company.
Yeah.
So the question also is like, are you sure you really want to have ownership and executive level involvement in this thing? On the one hand, probably it's not interesting to you to be an employee somewhere in a classic sense. But on the other hand, and I'll let you speak to this however much you want. It's not clear to me also that you are like, I must turn this into a bajillion-dollar outcome. Like that's not like, you're already comfortable. You've built, like, again, you were on record on my podcast saying this, that you didn't necessarily need to work in the future financially because your supply exit was really good and all that stuff. Let's just tell everybody you didn't make $50 million from that exit. It wasn't that, but it was still enough to like, to do that. So I think like that was like a consideration for me. It's like, I haven't had that. Are you sure you really want to participate at the level of that? And do I want somebody who isn't necessarily going to have the same level of motivation for an exit? So anyway, let me pause there and see what you think about that.
Yeah, I think one of or maybe the biggest fear for me was assuming accountability and responsibility that I didn't have to assume, right? Like I don't have to go buy a big piece of this business and try to grow it alongside of you. And I don't like, and when I say have to, just like financially, like it's not like I'm required to come in and log on every day to feed my family. And so why it's funny. When I guess we'll bring up again Taylor multiple times. When I kind of announced on Twitter X that I was doing this, he said, "Congratulations, you've traded complete freedom for being at the whims and mercies of all of your clients constantly, all the time." Something along that lines. And I was like, "You're right. Why on earth would I do that?" And I think you really helped me come to a really helpful and meaningful conclusion here, which is that you can probably say it better than me, but I'll kind of tee it up. But like that, assuming accountability and responsibility for things makes us better humans. And it provides kind of I'm here to grow as a person. Like that's my need in my life now. I don't need more money. I need to continue to become the man that I want to become. And I was telling a friend that literally this morning on a phone call, he said, "Tell me about your partner." And I said, "Well, that's the number one reason I'm in this business is because I get to work alongside Andrew. And I become more like the man I want to be by interacting with him." And it's a simple concept. It's a biblical concept. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. We sharpen each other in the work we do. And that sharpening process is painful sometimes. And it's not like it's not like every day I wake up and I'm like, rolling out of bed, popping open my laptop, going, I'm excited to hop into Notion and start cranking on some ad concepts. That's not the thing that motivates me, although I do enjoy that a lot. What motivates me is the realization that if I'm not sharpening myself in some way, then it's we always talk about businesses, either you're growing or you're dying. The same is true of ourselves as humans. And that's the thing that got me over this, like, oh, I don't want to commit, I don't want to be responsible, I don't want to be accountable. It's still my fear, like, if I'm going, do I really want to sign that contract? It's like, that's probably the fear. Why would I sign up for that sort of accountability? But that's overridden by everything else I just said. And maybe you can speak to it in a little bit of a different way, because you kind of helped form my thoughts on that.
I'm just not aiming to not work. And
Yeah.
I don't disagree with anything you're saying, partly because I've watched my friends like you not work and have a pretty bad time.
Yeah.
You didn't like it that much, it turned out. And
No, I didn't.
And it's because I think that just like broadly, this was a parallel consideration for me. Like a lot of my narrative was always like, I don't want to grow this, so I have a little more freedom, so I can sort of like take on, even the idea of I have 100% of the company right now. I can do whatever I want with it. So why would I take on the constraint of somebody owning part of the business?
That's the word you always used.
Yeah. And why would I do that? Well, it turns out that like it's maybe not actually best for me to own 100% of the business and to have all the freedom that I want. Like, what if it's actually better for me? In fact, it produces more joy in my life, which is the thing I'm always after. I want to optimize for joy. If I can actually have constraint in different ways, that actually might produce more of that. And I always give these examples, but like marriage, parenting, fitness, all of these things are similar things. This is rehashing some conversation I had with Olivia Corey. You haven't even heard this yet, Patrick, but I just had her on the podcast a couple days ago. I don't know what the order of the release is of this one versus that one, but we were talking about a lot of these same things. She was saying like, if I didn't need to work again, I would still work because I like work, and just like I don't want to just float around and do nothing, And so then, but there's like another layer of it for me, which is this thing of like, maybe the thing I tell myself about like not wanting to grow the business is actually just my resistance to providing the most excellent work possible because I'm afraid of the accountability. And that's actually not good for me. That's not being the kind of person I want to be. And so anyway, so then we have this shared vision and shared alignment here that we're describing. And I think what that also reflects is like another big factor for me was like, in my view with equity, one of the ways I've seen equity go really badly and partnership go really badly, like really badly actually, is when partners have very different ideas of the outcomes they're trying to produce. And so like I watched this happen. I've watched this happen in multiple places where people go, one partner is like, I really want, this thing to be $100 million in valuation. Another partner's like, I want it to be 20 million and sell it and whatever, or I want to cash flow it versus not, and then also like lifestyle considerations. Like what if one partner's like, hey, this is my whole life, I'm going to grind 80 hours a week, etc. This is what I'm doing, that's what it requires, and that's fine. And then the other partner's like, I got small kids and I want to be at their games, and I'm 35 to 40 hours a week. Like if you have misalignment in those things and values in the business, what you care about for your employees, like it's going to show up and it's going to be a real problem. And so a core thing for me, as I kind of walked through like the sort of pre-foundational stages here, starting building the foundation of a potential partnership, was like, are Patrick and I really aligned on what we're trying to accomplish? But as you talk, it's like, I want to be a certain kind of person. And like we do have, I think, very good alignment on, we actually want to build something that is an agency that resists chaos, which is very hard to do. To Taylor's joke, like you're at the whims and mercies of your clients all the time and whatever, and you're taking all this freedom. Well, like maybe there's a way to curb that a little and to make it so that like we just, maybe we don't grow as fast or as big, but like we also have a certain kind of lifestyle that we can maintain. Like I don't really want to work more than 40 hours a week, if I can help it, maybe even a little less. Like, and then, like what about exit potential? Actually, like you like, I probably still do need to work, but like I make plenty of money. I don't really care if we have an exit in terms of like, it's okay. I'm okay. So in terms of like having a crazy life-changing moment, that's what I don't care about it. Now we've set a goal around like a potential exit timeline or like building the business for that or whatever. And it turns out like, again, you and I like had a very easy time coming to a shared vision of how big we wanted to get, how fast within the constraints of the work hours we wanted to keep and what we would want to exit for and all that. And it was like, okay, actually, wait, as we actually start to put pen to paper here between vision, values, where we're going, what timeline, how much, what work culture we want to have, what we think gets us there, commitment to the Philippines as the way of doing this, like all of these little things, we both start to go like, yep, 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 yep. And suddenly there's like this extreme alignment around how all of this stuff works. Shared faith, I think, is a really important part of the story. Like you and I are after the same things in life more broadly in that respect. So yeah, to me, that was like, that just became kind of clearer and clearer the more that we talked. And it became like, all right, let's do that. Is there anything you want to add there?
No, I think you summarized that well. Yeah, and I think you mentioned like we're also just like very similar humans, similar life stage, similar kid ages, number of kids, parenting styles. Some people on our team joke that we kind of we're the same person, just I think some people joked the other day about one of our podcasts is like I can't even tell the difference between you two. You're both wearing hats, it's like tall,
you got
middle-aged.
You got a little twang, not too much, but a little
bit. Yeah. I gotta catch up to you on the 6-pack, but otherwise we're very similar.
I don't have a 6-pack. Hopefully soon. Yeah, it is actually almost a stereotype in terms of two roughly 40-year-old white guys with a beard having a podcast and a business together.
Yep.
If you are building an e-commerce business, you need customer service support, help desk software, and you should do that with my friends at RICHPANEL. RICHPANEL is used by multiple of my clients, just as they're used across the e-commerce ecosystem, from brands from like $0 all the way through 9-figure brands like Ridge Wallet and others who are like very large brands growing very fast and who RICHPANEL can easily support. They can be with you at any step of the journey, and they can be a huge help. And that's because they're built from the ground up with AI, and being AI first helps RICHPANEL to build great software as opposed to trying to bolt on AI into old legacy software. And RICHPANEL, among other things, on top of being just great customer service help desk software, including having like AI agents that will respond to comments for you on your Facebook ads and Instagram ads, like that's an incredible thing. That's been a huge problem for as long as I've been in ads. If you're an agency person, you should be telling your clients about RICHPANEL entirely, because like it is so nice that they have an automated way to handle comments at scale. It's just like huge pain. But on top of that, RICHPANEL promises 30% savings for you if you switch from Gorgias or Zendesk to RICHPANEL. 30% guaranteed savings on your bill. And so if you have not at least taken a call with them to see if they can be a good help to you, it's time to do that. On top of that, they also promise, yes, a 30% reduction in tickets if you switch over, because AI is so helpful at reducing ticket loads, which means there's additional cost savings there. Their customer service self-help portal that customers can work through is really good, powered by AI to get customers answers to their questions quickly. Just really awesome. I also like the team over there so much. Amit, the CEO, awesome dude, and a guy who I've really enjoyed interacting with. They're building something cool. They have an awesome mentality about it, to be really client first, really think about how to build and not overpromise with AI. It's really great. Go check it out today. Only 2 weeks to transition your team from your current help desk software to RICHPANEL. They guarantee that as well. Go to richpanel.com to check it out for yourself today. I think it is important to lay all that out because
I did not wear a hat today, though.
One of the things in all this consideration is just that I've watched a lot of equity things go wrong. And so like that was another consideration for me in all this. It's a lot of why I talked to Taylor about it. As Taylor, I know, has seen them go. I've been in, when I was at 4x400, one of the big fundamental problems in that business was the cap table in all kinds of crazy ways. It's actually way beyond, but it did help solidify for me the notion that if you get that wrong, it can really screw things up in the business. And I know I watched Taylor go through good and bad both with that. Like I saw him do some things that he would say was bad and was good. And that's the business I've been closest to. That's been there. That's why I called him so much in this process, because I've just seen him wrestle with it, and also have seen how important it is in the business, where it really matters to get this right, because not only can it go really wrong, but like it has real problems when it goes wrong. The incentive structure messes up, and people's sort of rights in the business mess up. And so pre-analyzing the sort of fit here was good. It was really important to me. And at some point, though, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to ask you, and feel free to take this wherever you want, but we're going to talk about how we're designing it to make it hopefully go right. But you've mentioned you have a lot of good insights about how it's gone wrong. I've enjoyed hearing like specific examples. It's helpful to me because I don't have a lot of experience here. I'd be curious if you like anything like comes to mind of like how it goes wrong and poorly and how that has affected how you want to move forward, making sure we do it right.
Sure. A couple of things. One of them is just the wrong person for the level of character. I've seen like people whose character I don't believe in have a large portion of a business and have a lot of sway in the business. And so like just that baseline level is a problem. Another thing I've seen happen a number of times is one partner has a whole bunch of equity in something that they don't actually do the work in. I think that's a really big problem. Taylor, again, has been critical in pointing this out. His comment is that equity is the lifeblood of the business. And so like essentially, if you take somebody who has a large portion of the lifeblood and you take that blood out of the business, basically, right? But they actually still have it, then it's like a problem, right? So it's like somebody owns 30% of the company, but they're not doing any of the work on the company. It like really messes up the behaviors in like this sort of sneaky way. And so like that's definitely an issue that I've seen happen. Another one is just like the wrong people having a lot of it in terms of their skill set. Like I've seen people who own a large portion of the business, but who can't really actually deliver on the job. Even if they are in the business, they're just not good enough to pull their weight, or maybe they're in the wrong seat or something like that. That's another thing I've seen go very badly. And I've actually seen it all the way to the point where, like I already mentioned, like these are all specific examples and I have examples in mind. I just don't want to name any names, but but yeah, another thing I've seen is like people with different vision, which I mentioned before, where like I've actually seen exit deals get held up foolishly because the parties can't agree on like that, and so they can't get enough shares voted to like have an exit, even when an exit's sitting right there, and that's like a real problem. So yeah, a bunch of those, and then the other one is just like weird structures where like at 4x400, that was the problem, where it was like we owned little bits of a bunch of different businesses, but then also those businesses owners, those brands owners still own parts of them, but we owned all of 4x400, and like it was like a very bizarre setup, and all of these incentives were all over the place. You had investors with owning different parts. It was just like that was just like complicated mess. All of those things I've seen happen, and I wanted to sort of avoid as much as possible. So it's for me like the primary goal at the end of this was, how do we create an equity structure that actually reflects the contribution and commitment and value that we both can bring to the table, so that it's reflective of what's true about the operations of the business. That's actually my main concern. And if that means that I get less of it because I actually bring less to the table than I thought, that's okay with me. It should be essentially a reflection of what's true, as opposed to me creating a truth, if that makes sense. That's the way I view it. Yeah. That actually leads to one other thing, which is like there's one with the negative examples that I was thinking about here, which was like, and I'm curious how you consider this. Like, we're going to talk about legal mechanisms for solving problems if it goes badly, because lots of people have great intentions in their partnerships when they start. Well, actually, let's actually say that. Let's say this part of it. Let's go into like how we structured this. So So how much of my business are you buying? And then we'll talk about why you're buying it and why I'm not giving you portions of it or whatever, and some of that stuff. So let's get into the weeds here.
Yeah. So pretty simple. I'm buying upfront, just complete clean transaction from you, 45% of the business for $45 million.
That's a conservative valuation too. Taylor was like, you got to get 100 from him. You got to get 100. I was like, that's all right, man. That's fine. 45's enough for me.
We talked about different structures of like earning some of it versus buying a portion up front, but we just landed on, let's just make it clean, simple. I'm just going to buy 45%. You'll obviously have 55%. And then, of course, we've talked about ways to allow other employees to buy in over time in the future. So that had a little bit to do with the split that we decided. But I don't know if I've ever actually verbalized this to you out loud, but I had a business law professor. I don't know why. This is the only thing I remember from his class like 20 years ago. But he made the statement that you should never be in a partnership where you're 50-50. Somebody should always have at least 1% more. So like 51-49. I don't know why. That always stuck with me. I always kind of viewed that as the gospel truth. So that kind of always colored my thoughts with you, is like, you started it. I don't ever want to be in a position where I feel like, I have more say than you. So that's kind of how we talked about 33 and everything from 33 to 49, and we just landed on 45. It just kind of felt right.
So let's talk about that a little more. So that's true, 45. Well, let's actually talk about the mechanism. So on the other hand, like part of it is that I wanted to give you some of it, and as like essentially as like your compensation package as an employee, because I think that would reflect what you would do if you're bringing an executive at your level, the number 2 in the business. Like there would be an equity plan as part of that. But for tax purposes, if I give you equity in the business as part of your compensation, that becomes a taxable event, and so you have to pay taxes on the value of the equity at some valuation of the company, right? So that's annoying. Like it's just
that's
sort
annoying.
of silly and
it's complicated.
And then also you just have to pay tax on that, which sucks. So so instead what we did was we said, like, let's curve the valuation that we can agree on towards the lower end of the spectrum that essentially bakes in the business, because the truth is like AJF Growth is not a transactable business right now. So like any valuation we come up with is defensible within basic reason, right? Like $100 million would not be defensible, but like, the business had 3 US employees when you came into it, and then a few more in the Philippines. So people can figure out we're not going to give the actual dollar amounts on these things for a bunch of reasons, but people can figure out it wasn't that big of a business producing that much profit all told. And so, but within that, there's no obvious book value way to do this where it's like, oh, quick, easy, like 3x EBITDA or something. It's like, well, you could say that, but you could also say 2x EBITDA and it would be equally defensible. And so what we did was we said, like, what's a valuation that you and I basically agree is the sort of the true value of the business as best as we can tell. Okay, we came up with a number, boom. And then we just curved that number down enough to make it so that your money in buying your 45% went further than the initial valuation that we did, because either one is defensible. So it ended up being a convenient way to sort of solve this problem where now nobody's taxed. I mean, I am taxed on the sale of the equity, but that was going to be true either way in some way. Yeah. So that's the way we sort of determined how to price that equity. Anything you want to add?
No. Just to add that the value we landed on is still a defensible value, and there's nothing like legally or financially wrong with where we landed.
Was it at all tricky to you to talk through how to value my business? Like, did you feel like you had to soft pedal that at all or anything?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, all of this has been tricky. Not only the value of the business, but also like what we'll get into, like some of the rights and the clauses, and the value was probably one of the easier parts because all the numbers that the whole range of numbers we've talked about all makes sense. Anything higher than the range we've been talking about, maybe would have kind of been like, I don't know about that, Andrew, but it all makes sense. What it came down to, it's funny, is like just what felt right, what felt, we've talked about this, what like kind of felt meaningful enough to where it rewards you for what you've built and is, slightly painful for me to write that big of a check. The number thing was probably the easiest. The harder thing was like, what happens when so-and-so, we had to like kind of think through all the worst case scenarios of what would happen with our partnership and as a result, our friendship, our relationship. And then how do we create legal mechanisms that kind of cover us, so to speak, for those kind of scenarios?
Yeah. Let's talk about a couple other things with the structure of the deal first, though.
Sure.
The valuation part, the thing I do want to point out about this is that first of all, for me, my position here is like, I was not trying to squeeze the highest valuation number I possibly could out to like get like, oh, can I get you to agree to 10% higher valuation? Then when it comes down, I get more money from you or anything.
Yeah.
Like I really did want to come to a point where you felt really good about the number. And there's a number of reasons for that, but one of the reasons for that is that it's going to not matter to me very much if we get where we're trying to go, because there's going to be plenty of money. So like ultimately you are going to bring what I view you as somebody who's going to bring so much value to all the things that you said earlier, to my life, to my growth, to all the things that, I'm with you. Like those are the things that are most important to me, but then to the business itself, that it just is, it was like, okay, I'm going to be fine here. Like if we get anywhere towards where we're trying to get to, because so I don't need to try to squeeze all this out of you. But there's another reason for that, which is this, I think will come up again too, which is like the biggest threats to our partnership for a number of reasons, in my view, or to this whole thing, is that something breaks in our friendship, that we relationally have fracture. I really think people undervalue this in business partnerships
easily,
which is like if it's the case that your cap table matters a lot, and that's like lack of shared vision, lack of shared values, or just like interpersonal relationship stuff could get in the way. If that's true, then you need to think proactively about like, well, what is going to nurture the relationship? Because then that creates a core risk to the business outcome. Like you just have to forget the friendship outcome. Like just the pure business outcome is threatened by something going wrong there. And so another part of this for me is like, I didn't want to come up with a number where you just kind of felt a tinge of resentment. Like Andrew squeezed me on this or whatever. It's like, that's bad. Like let's get to a number instead where we say like everybody feels really good about where we're at, and it sort of reflects that. Because one of the critical things to me here, I mean, obviously at the human level first, but even aside from that, is that we sort of maintain a relationship that is working along the way.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point. Like, and I'll even say like, I hadn't articulated in my head as well as you just did, which is like the human aspect of the partnership is the most critical one. Like, and none of this is in the contracts or any of the numbers we've agreed to. But if our relationship breaks down, the business breaks down, and I think that's an extremely good point. I feel great about where we landed. I didn't feel like you
Yeah.
were trying to squeeze me. I felt the same way on my end. I wasn't trying to like go, undervalue what you've built. I wanted to come up with a fair, reasonable valuation. So I felt the same way on my side. Can you look into the camera and say you weren't squeezed, that you're happy with where we landed?
I'm 100% happy with where we landed. Yeah. Yeah, 100%. I do think that many people will nod along to this comment, but that people then don't operationalize the response, you know? And it's a very business way of looking at it. But it's like, you and I had this conversation the other day. It's like, let's both think proactively. Like, what makes you feel cared for and heard and seen? It sounds sort of mushy or something like that, but it's like, I just think it's really important. And it's like, do we need to make sure that we like, I don't know, go to Disneyland together when you're out in California next or something? Like what? Because if we need to do that to make the friendship like thrive, or do we need to go like do something together that's not work? You know what? I'm just making that up, but like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what do we need to do to continue to do that without recognizing like it's not like we have to be very best friends in the whole world or something like that either. It's just that like you're not my wife, but it's like there's a real reality there. In fact, in some ways like a marriage where there's a legal contract binding you together, and if you split up, it's really expensive, so and damaging. So it's like, you need to nurture it and you need to care about it.
What helps this actually, and you kind of undersold yourself a little bit before, but you have a great business, and both of us, there's no question in either of our mind that we're going to build an amazing, very, very successful business. And so like, it just doesn't matter, if at the end of the day, I'm just making up numbers, you make $10 million as opposed to 12, it just doesn't matter.
I don't, I literally, that marginal $2 million means zero to me. I do not care in that explanation. Yeah.
And so
it's been awesome for me.
There's this underlying assumption that we both know this is going to go great. And even if it doesn't, we'll be better off for it. So that makes those conversations easier.
I'm normally the optimist, but I feel like that was a high level of confidence and optimism. Not that you're not optimistic, but just in most conversations I'm in, I am. And I appreciated that confidence.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about one more aspect of the actual deal structure that I think is really important, which is that a vote for almost anything major in the business requires an 80% of shares voting the same way.
The way we set it up.
Big deal. Yeah. So while it's technically true that we're not equal partners, we may as well be in terms of the power in the business, because we can't change the name of the business without us both voting it. Critically, we can't transact the business without both of us voting our shares.
Yeah.
And we will not get to a point where like we're going to invite enough other people and dilute ourselves down to where you and I don't have it. So now you and I are going to control what happens in the business in the biggest, most important ways, distributing money, like all of those things. We will both be able to stop each other from doing this. So like, I'll just put it very frankly, even though I'm only selling 45% of the business, I'm giving up material autonomy and material freedom in doing this.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think that's interesting.
Are you sure about that?
Well, no, of course I'm not, and I think that's just realistic. Like I'm sure I want to do it right now, but I'm not sure it will work out. I am as confident as I possibly can be that it will work out. But I think this is like a significant thing that I think a lot of people think I'm kind of crazy for doing, actually. But I actually feel like when our lawyer sort of sent us that, I had suggested something like this in our conversation with him about what we were trying to get towards, but then it like kind of hit me as like oh yeah, we're really doing that.
It's a big deal.
I'm curious how important that is to you, and was that something you would have fought for? Like, I don't want Andrew to be able to sell the business without my shares voted or whatever,
There's one thing I felt really strongly about as we talked through this, and it was that I have no interest in doing this business with anybody else. And so what I mean by that is like, I have no interest in allowing Andrew to, for example, go, hey, Patrick, I'm done. I'm going to sell my shares. And now, Joe Schmo is your new partner. Like, That is extremely uninteresting to me. That's really the only thing I wanted to be able to control when it came to decision making, is that I don't want that situation to happen. Other than that, like, I don't feel like I have to have. I think it's good and healthy that we required both of us to be on the same page for major decisions. But if you came to me and you're like, I just don't feel good about that, I want to change it. You know, I want to carve out these category of things that I can make decisions on, I would be very open to that, mostly because I trust your judgment, and there's basically nothing meaningful that we've agreed on, even like small stuff. Like, we almost agree on everything. I'm sure I'm naive, and there'll be something in the future and even when we disagree, like it almost, doesn't matter, because, it's like one of us usually defers to the other, in the thing that we're disagreeing on. I just don't see a situation other than like, yeah, I'm sure there are tons of situations where it could go poorly for us if I gave you full control and ability to make decisions, but I don't have any problem with that on the surface.
Yeah, for me, the calculation was what I said earlier, which is that I think that equity ought to reflect the truth of the reality of the business. And an agency, as I've said a lot of times recently, is at its core is operationalized knowledge. That's what an agency sells. Yeah, and I can do knowledge pretty well, I think. I can't operationalize it without you. And so I just think, but that's actually, it's as central to what an agency is as the knowledge part. It's why a lot of agencies are bad. A lot of agencies are bad on the knowledge side. A lot of them are bad on the operations side. It's sort of the classic thing of like, oh, I got the junior guy at the agency running my account, and that's why it's bad. It's like, well, that's an operationalization problem. Like, maybe the founder is good, but you're junior. So to me, that's like really critical, and I can't do that. So I think it reflects the truth. So both the 45% number and the 80% agreement, number, both reflect the truth of what the business actually is in a way that is just realistic. And so to me, that's there. I also do think, and this is probably where I'm both an idealist and really different than a lot of people, I am suspicious of single person authorities as a general rule. I think it's really good I think groups of leaders making decisions together who you trust is better for most organizations, even if it makes them a little less dynamic. Probably, especially if you're not trying to go extremely fast or big, which I'm not. So if that's not a major value, then I think groups of decision makers do better on decision making. So forcing some consensus in that group is good. And then what you got to do is seriously gate who gets let into that group. So if you're really careful about that, then you're in good shape. So to me, that's another element of this that I think is important. I don't want to be the only person with the authority. I think that's not necessarily good for the organization. And again, I'm still the CEO. Like, I have plenty of authority to do things, and we're not sitting here standing over each other's shoulder and saying, "Are you sure you're doing that right?" It's not like that at all. But just for me, I think that's probably a sort of a countercultural value I have. I think that I think is important in organizations for a bunch of reasons. Again, a single leader is just a massive risk in a business. So there's risk on this side too, which is that we can't come to a consensus or whatever. But for me, that calculation mattered.
Yeah.
You want to talk about what we built in case something breaks, in case the partnership does go wrong, and how do we protect ourselves in those things?
Yeah. The big thing for me was like I said before, I have no interest in doing this with somebody else or by myself. So we built in some clauses that basically, if one of us wants out for some reason, there's kind of a framework we follow. And, just to get into the weeds, it's like there's like a right of first offer for any voluntary internal exit. So let's say you want out. You're like, hey, I think this is what the ROFO is. No, that's the buy-sell trigger. Right of first offer is you allow me.
We have to offer our shares to each other before we can offer them to anybody else, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you want out, you have to offer to me first. And then if I say, nah, I'm not interested in buying them, then there's a buy-sell trigger, which is basically, we haven't decided if it's appraisal-based or shotgun, but a shotgun buy-sell trigger would be that you come to me and you say, hey, I think the business is worth $100 million. And then either I have to buy your portion at that amount, or you have to buy me out at that amount. Is that correct? That's how it works?
Yeah. So it's a push-pull clause. So like, it's such a clever idea to me. Basically, like, if you get to an impasse relationally and everything else, and you can't figure out a way forward, then we could initiate the push-pull, and it is a shotgun clause. Like, yeah, so it's like essentially what it does, and I didn't know this clause existed, but it's such a smart mechanism for this. It's that one party gets to say a valuation, and the other party gets to decide, okay, I will buy or sell at that valuation.
That's right.
So it sort of
That's right.
forces both people into being rational, because
Yeah.
if I say, let's say we have 10 clients and I'm like $150 million valuation, then you could be like, great, I'm selling at that. And then I have to buy your shares at that valuation.
Yeah.
But if I'm trying to screw you and get your shares really cheap, I'm like, oh, it's only a $500,000 valuation. Then you're like, great, I will buy your shares at that valuation. And so now I have to sell to you at that price instead of buy. So one partner gets to decide the valuation, the other partner gets to decide if they want to buy or sell at that valuation. It's a really clever way to make both people act rationally, basically. So that is in there as sort of the mechanism for solving a dispute if it came to it. That's the core one. That's the core thing that comes in.
Yeah.
Which shout out, I think it's Ido. I think I'm saying his name right. Big shout out from Barabee. And I'm so sorry. We haven't talked for a while, so I got your name wrong. I really apologize. But he emailed me separately after listening to me talk with, I think, Taylor about some of these topics on a podcast, and suggested this clause as a way of handling this problem. He just sort of went out of his way to say, hey, maybe this will help you. You should think about this. And I didn't even mention it to our lawyer. Our lawyer mentioned it to us separately from that. But it was such a kind thing for somebody to do. They listened to the podcast, they heard the thing that we're working through, and they were like, here, maybe I can help you. And that's fantastic. So thank you. Podcast@ajfgrowth.com if you want to do that. And while you're at it, subscribe wherever you're watching or listening, and leave a comment here for my engagement numbers. All right? Keep going, Patrick.
We added we haven't added it yet, but we're working on adding like a dispute resolution process. So if we do come to deadlock on something, there'll be some kind of mediation and binding arbitration process, that we'll probably never hopefully have to use, but it's there if we need to. This was a funny one. We added divorce transfer buyout rights. Neither of us ever intend on getting divorced or anything happening to our marriages, but at least I don't for me, and you don't for you, but you don't know about my relationship with Jennifer. You do, notionally, and I don't know about yours with Britt. So it's like the thing was that, like, basically I don't want to be in business with Britt. You don't want to be in business with Jennifer. Nothing against our wives, but like,
I really like Jennifer. I think she's great.
Yeah, I love Britt.
It's just not what I'm signing up for. Yeah,
exactly. So like you can't, and there was also like family transfer restrictions. So you can't transfer, the business to a family member or to a trust or anything without the other's consent.
I think the phrase I used with Doug, our lawyer, was, yes, I would like to make this as onerous on the divorced wife as possible. That's like, it's not against, it has nothing to do with them and what I think about divorce. No. But it was that's just not what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, it's just we're not here to be in business with anybody else. That's kind of the main point.
Yeah, right.
Death or disability kind of buyout rights. We're still working on the specifics there, but like that was a big concern of mine. Is like, what if I get hit by a bus? I don't want Andrew's business and him to suffer because I'm incapacitated. I wanted there to be a mechanism for that, and vice versa. So there's some kind of some verbiage around that.
There was an indemnification issue. That was a funny one. That was like there was a thing where essentially it was like an unlimited indemnification on the actual like purchase agreement. So this is just a funny idea. Just like basically like you could turn around and sue me in like 50 years because it was unlimited in time, when you're just like old and senile and you just decide like your brain is not working right anymore, and you're just like, I'm pretty confident that Andrew screwed me out of that equity deal 50 years ago. That would still be available. So we put a time limitation on the indemnification. Yeah.
Yeah. There was like restrictions on capital calls and member loans. So you can't, call for capital without unanimous approval. It's funny, as I'm reading through all of this, I'm like, does any of this really matter? Because it's like basically no decisions can be made without both of us agreeing. But then we're like going out and saying all the specific decisions that can't be made without both of us agreeing. So they're almost duplicative maybe, but they're worth kind of calling out. Yeah, those are the big ones.
It's a good moment to just appreciate Doug and just to say, like, good lawyers who walk you through this process. Great people. They're so valuable in businesses, and I'm grateful for them. I've come to appreciate good contracts over time.
For sure.
I'm such an idealist,
Just
but that's the case.
clarity.
Having said, yeah, exactly. And just situations you don't see coming and stuff. Having said that, one of the things that I have continued to think about with this is like, in a world where this goes badly, so much of this process is about trying to make sure that you sort of protect yourself in a world that goes badly. And one of the things I just believe is like, there's just a limit to how much I can do that. Like, even as I was sort of assessing and evaluating whether or not, like, okay, do I want to bring Patrick into my business? Like, I mean, now we know each other very well, I think, but in those days we didn't know each other that well. We hadn't spent that much time together realistically. And so we're kind of figuring that out. And I just at some point came to the conclusion, like, I don't know, maybe it will go badly, like, and that's just, there's just an inherent risk there. And I'm never going to get to the end of that. And it still could. And maybe you totally screw me, or maybe I totally screw you. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we've done all the right due diligence to try to stop ourselves from that happening. But if you totally screw me, like, one of the things I've really sort of accepted is like, well, then I'm totally screwed. And then that will be another part of life that I will walk through and try to sort out what that means for my pursuit of joy and character and all, like, I'm not going to probably ever go to the mattresses. Is that the phrase? Go to the mats? Go to war, whatever, trying to keep myself from getting screwed, short of it affecting my family in a really negative way or something. But I just think like there's just a thing where it's like, then that would suck,
You mentioned that the other day, and I really appreciated that. That's not us going willy-nilly into this partnership. Like we've talked
I
through
want a
everything.
good contract.
We've got a great contract. We've got a great understanding. But at the end of the day, like, it's a good reminder that as much control as we like to think we exert on our lives, we have almost none. And like, it's good to just go, I'm going to try my best to make sure this is set up for success, and we'll see what happens. And as a engineer, who loves to have control over all the minute details of everything in his life, that's a refreshing kind of thought for me to have, which is I'm going to give it my best, and it's all in the Lord's hands.
I fired my own brother from doing production and post-production on this show because I found a replacement at More Staffing. If you have ever thought that I was lying to you about my commitment to using More Staffing for things, that is the proof that you need. It turns out that I could get incredible post-production work at a much lower price than what my brother could offer me because I could find incredible talent in the Philippines with my friends at More Staffing who staffed that position. And I've actually gotten good feedback recently, specifically about the production value, partly because the edits have been good and all of those things, partly because I upgraded my camera, of course. But More Staffing is just amazing. And I'm really dead serious about saying we are using More Staffing in every part of our business to build an awesome business that attracts great talent from the Philippines who have really good resumes, who really know what they're doing, and who are critical parts of our team. I can tell you about my team member, Yaz, who is just like an amazing employee, a really critical part of my team. And he's just awesome. And he was staffed in this business through More Staffing on the media buying side of things. We're looking at ways to get him more responsibility all the time, more growth all the time, because he's just so good. I've seen that happen over and over. On top of all that, More Staffing actually also now has built a service that's really cool for e-commerce businesses. Basically, because they were formed out of e-commerce businesses, More Staffing will come alongside you and help you forecast and build a roadmap for your OpEx specifically. So you can think through, like, where is my OpEx now? What should it be? What are the benchmarks for what my OpEx should be at? And how can I use a mix of AI, offshoring, and financial intelligence to reduce my OpEx in my business and still run a great business? And that produces more profit along the way. And in the midst of that, they will connect you with incredible Filipino talent who can work across all parts of your e-commerce business in the US. And it's people, again, because they were born out of e-commerce businesses in the US, they really understand deeply marketing, supply chain, design, editing, like whatever you can say, customer service, all of these different parts of the business. They understand what great talent looks like, how to connect you to those people, and it's just great. So go to morestaffing.co/AF if you are building an e-commerce business, you want to think about how to reduce your OpEx, apply great talent to your business, and fire your own family members if you need to do it. Go to morestaffing.co/AF and get a conversation started with More Staffing today. Do you want to share where we're trying to get to at all? Like, do you want to do a valuation number or a number of clients or anything like that? Like,
well, the way I just tell like people who ask me, friends, like, our goal is to basically 10x the size of the business in 4 to 5 years. And in some ways that's a very aggressive goal. In other ways, it's like actually not all that crazy to think about. And that's one of the things I love about this business is it's very it feels to me, I'm sure we'll get along and be like, oh, I definitely didn't view that right. But it feels to me like very copy paste. And what we've been doing together all this year is like really defining how we do things at a granular level so that we can then just go, okay, one more, and so we organize our company in pods, and so growing 10x means making 9 more pods. In some ways that feels like a lot to me because it's a lot of people, it's a lot of clients. The people part kind of overwhelms me, a little bit. Thinking about how many employees that is, how many clients that is, just pure operations of it. It's kind of copy paste. So
Yeah, I think that's a good way of framing it. I think another way of framing it is like, it's actually like in the next year, it's like 3 or 4 more clients. So like we're talking about a pretty like realistic and steady growth pace. Goal is to keep making sure that we do a great job with maintaining a really high quality of service. We have enough money coming through the business while we're distributing along the way. It's wonderful thing about service businesses is they're not cash intensive. They require very little working capital. So like you can distribute your cash constantly. This is something Taylor talks about a lot as well. And then as we do that, I think the next year after that, it's where you're trying to grow by 2 pods a year or something. And by the end, that's only like 8 clients a year or something like that. It depends, assuming some attrition and all that stuff. But I like that. I think it reflects like, that can be done without going super crazy, super fast. And in fact, every time we add a pod and add clients and do this, we're going to get better at the process of doing that. And, we can maintain a really high standard for who we hire in the business because we're not trying to hire so many people so fast. Like all of those kinds of things, I think work for allowing us to pursue that on a reasonable timeline. By the time you get there, the sort of steady growth path, you end up with a really, really good business that produces a whole bunch of cash that is very sellable, very transactable. And you can decide what you want to do in those times, assuming it goes well, if you can actually accomplish that. And so I think it's like a really good goal. And it reflects to me this thing that I just feel like I see all over the place right now. And it's become this critical strategic point of view for me, which is attempting to grow steadily over time can produce a very good, very profitable, very valuable business. And in fact, trying to like the rocket ship stories are fun and interesting and they're really cool in their own ways, but they're actually distractions and often are negative. Like having a steadier growth plan is often the thing that will actually produce a better business for the vast majority of us. I think there are probably some outlier CEO types who really can build a monster business really fast at venture scale and all those kinds of things. But most of us probably shouldn't try to do that. I think it'll actually work against our methods. And so for me, it's like another thing where both in terms of what I want for my life and then even just at like the pure business strategy level, like I think the way we're doing this is the way that I think is right.
And for the client experience, the employee experience, we talk about ourselves building an anti-chaos agency. That's for our clients, for ourselves, and for our employees. We want people to love the work they do for us. We want our clients to love the work that we do. We want to love our work. It all goes back to what you said at the top of the podcast, which is we're optimizing for joy. And I think the plan we have really helps us kind of focus on that while still being aggressive and enough to do something that we're proud of and excited about.
All right, man. Thanks for taking the time. I'm excited to make this happen and lock things up and go into 2026 with an actual business partner.
Love it. Let's do it. AJF Sloth.
AJF Sloth. New name. Send us your new name ideas, by the way. That's another thing you can email me about. We need a new name because now it's not just my business anymore. So yeah. All right. Thanks, Patrick.
All right. See you, bud.
Are we idiots? Are we idealistic fools walking into this? So excited about the partnership right now in the honeymoon phase, and it's all going to go wrong, and we didn't protect ourselves enough. Did I give up too much control? Whatever you think, leave a comment. Let me know. I am all ears. I'm happy to hear what you think. So leave a comment, let me know, or email me, podcast@ajfgrowth.com. And of course, if you would like to be one of those 3 or 4 new clients that we add in the next year, you can go to ajfgrowth.com, fill in the intake form and tell me a little bit about your e-commerce brand and what you are looking for, how we can help, and we'll get a conversation going from there. Big thanks to RICHPANEL, customer service software that a bunch of my clients use and that you should be considering using as well. They're great, richpanel.com. And also more staffing, of course. More staffing is a huge help to AJF Growth and to a lot of e-commerce brands that we service and that we have seen and sent them to. Morestaffing.co/AF is the place to go get them started. As always, subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. A whole bunch of great episodes coming soon. You're not going to want to miss those, including in the new year, Curtis Matsko from Portland Leather Goods talking about the absolute insane near $200 million monster that they are building and the growth they've had. He is going to be a really fun, really lively guest. So don't miss that. Thanks so much for watching or listening. I'll talk to you soon.